physical capital per worker and see how it affects productivity. We say that productivity is higher when the average worker has more capital. By capital, we mean those things that we use in the production, like machines, equipment, and things like that. So if we increase capital per worker, we're going to increase output per worker, whatever they produce, or we're going to increase productivity. Think about this. When you're working on math problems, you probably are able to solve them faster if you have a calculator. So calculator is your capital. You are more productive when you have more of this capital. The capital has a very interesting property that we call diminishing returns to capital. What does it mean? The more physical capital per worker, the higher productivity. But the increase will be relatively smaller than increase in the capital. Well, sounds like a complicated way to define this property. Let's try again. Every time you add a bit of capital, your productivity increases. But it's not going to increase by as much as the previous bit added to your productivity. What does it mean? It means that before having a calculator, you were pretty slow when it came to solving math problems. Once you got a calculator, you got pretty productive. You were able to solve more problems. So you were solving them much faster and probably better because now you didn't have to think about what's 20 divided by 3 equals 2. But think about what will happen if you add a second calculator. Are you going to be more productive? Probably. Let's say one calculator you use for simple calculation, another calculator you use to remember some numbers or something like that. You are more productive. But that first calculator added much more productivity to you than that second calculator did. So that's what diminishing returns to physical capital tells us. It also means that the higher existing level of the capital, the smaller will be increase in the productivity if more capital is added. Why is this important? It's important when we compare in two different countries, one that doesn't have much of the capital and the other one that has a lot of capital. Add the equal amount of capital to both of those countries. Where are you going to see higher growth? Most likely, the percentage-wise growth is going to be higher at the poorer country. We're going to see in a second why. Let's look at another example that explains us the productivity. Let's compare a chef with 1 knife versus a chef with 20 knives. What can we tell about this chef with 1 knife? If we give him a second knife, his productivity is probably going to increase by a lot. The reason for it is that each knife serves different purpose. One knife is for carving meat, another one is for cutting vegetables. So when we get him the second knife, he's able to be much more productive. Now imagine a chef with 20 knives. He already has every possible knife we can think of. What if we give him additional knife? Is he going to be more productive? Probably. But by how much his productivity is going to increase? Probably not by too much. Really, what is this 21st knife is going to add to his collection? Maybe he'll be going to be able to carve roses out of the tomatoes, but he's been more productive, but not as much as that first guy with just 1 knife. So based on this property, we define such thing as we call catch-up effect. Diminishing return explain why countries like US grow slower than countries like China. In fact, that's what we're seeing right now. We're lucky in US if we have 1 or 2% economic growth. China, on the other hand, economy of China grows much faster. This catch-up effect is the property whereby poor countries tend to grow more rapidly than rich ones. This effect explains that countries that start off with little amount of capital will grow faster than those with a lot of capital, and as a result, they'll be able to catch up. Let's see how it works. Let's look at the graph that illustrates this effect. On the vertical axis, we're going to put our productivity, output per worker. Y stands for the output, L stands for the labor. And on the horizontal axis, we're going to put capital per worker. So we're going to see how our productivity changes based on the amount of capital that we have. It's going to look like this graph. What does it mean? It means that if we increase capital per worker, we increase their productivity. But we increase it in decreasing rate. So let's start with analyzing poor country. A poor country probably has just a little bit of capital per worker. And that capital per worker is going to define how productive they are. Rich country starts at the point where there's already a lot of capital per worker, and it's going to define how productive they are. Now let's add some capital per worker to a poor country. Based on this graph, we see a rapid growth of this poor country. If we add exactly the same amount to the rich country, you see this second arrow is exactly the same length as the first arrow. We see that rich country is growing, but not as fast as the poor country. So we see the economic growth, but we also see that it's not as high as for the poor countries. So with time, due to this property, we say that poor countries have all the potential to catch up with the rich countries. So how can we ensure that our countries receive that necessary capital? We can boost productivity by increasing the capital, we denote by letter K. Capital requires investment. In order to purchase that calculator, we need to make an investment in that calculator. Remember that investment in economics is defined as a purchase of physical capital. Since resources are scarce, producing more capital requires producing less of the consumption goods. So here we're facing a trade-off. We don't know if we want to produce more capital or if we want to produce more of the consumption goods. You don't know if you want to buy that calculator for your math problems or if you want to buy a pair of new shoes. There's a trade-off between our consumption and our productivity and our investment. So if we consume less, we have more money saved. And this extra savings is going to fund the production of investment goods. So we see this trade-off between current consumption and future consumption. Because if you invest in something today, it means in the future you're going to consume more. You're going to become more productive, as thus consume more in the future. So the less you consume today, the more you will consume tomorrow, and vice versa. So this is a chart that illustrates how physical capital and productivity are related. If we're saving more, we're able to invest more. We have more physical capital, which increases the capital per worker, which affects the productivity and ultimately affects our standard of. So save today if you want to live better tomorrow. Also, government can encourage investment from abroad. We say that to raise capital per worker, enhance productivity, wages, and living standards, the government can encourage either foreign direct investment or foreign portfolio investment, or both. Foreign direct investment, we refer to a situation in which a capital investment is owned and operated by the foreign entity. So an example of foreign direct investment would be a Toyota company opening a store, opening their factory in the United States, like they do in Georgia. Foreign portfolio investment refers to a capital investment financed with foreign money, but operated by domestic residents. It's a purchase of those stocks by foreigners of United States companies. So in a way, when you purchase a stock, it means you own a part of the company. So foreigners purchase the stocks of the companies existing in the United States and thus allow that company to have extra money to purchase physical capital per worker. as always, we are concerned about what's going to happen when the returns go back to the foreign countries. Yes, that's a concern. Some of these returns from this investment will flow back to foreign countries. But overall, this foreign investment is beneficial. It is especially beneficial in poor countries that cannot generate enough savings to fund investment projects themselves. If you think about really, really poor countries where people don't have enough money for the consumption of simplest goods like water or bread or other food items, they're really not going to be able to save money in order to purchase physical capital. So in those cases, foreign investment is even more beneficial. It also helps poor countries to learn state-of-the-art technologies that are developed by the other countries. So when a company is being created in the other country, the technology available moves to that country as well. So other enterprises are able to learn about that technology, what ultimately helps the country overall.